Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. Amma ba'du. My brothers and sisters, if anyone were to ask me to name probably the topic of maximum interest to Muslims, I would say it is the topic of rizq, the topic of sustenance. And that is why I want to talk to you today, and the title of this is the question of rizq, ordained or obtained. I hope this will be beneficial for you. For those of you who are interested in a more detailed treatment of this topic, please read my book. It is called Rizq, Ordained or Obtained, and it's available on Amazon, and we'll also put a link to that in the description of this video. There is also a much more detailed lecture on this topic which I did several years ago. I think totally that's about 3 hours. It's roughly about an hour and a half in 2 parts. But I decided to do this one to try to encapsulate as briefly as possible the significant salient features and salient points with respect to rizq. Now, rizq it's very, very important to understand the whole question of rizq, because this is part of our belief, our aqidah, our creed about Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about destiny. So I request you please pay close attention, inshallah, to what I have to say, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put khair and barakah and blessing in what I have to say. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable me to say that which is beneficial for you and for me, as well as to prevent and protect us from anything which might be harmful. I want to begin with the purpose of our creation. Why are we even on this earth? Because rizq or sustenance has to do with our presence in the world, and obviously therefore it follows, or it stems from the reason why we are on this earth. About this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned very clearly, and in this set of 3 ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned also sustenance and rizq. In Surah Al-Dhariyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ رِزْقٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَنْ يُطْعِمُونَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, which means in Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayahs 56 to 58, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and I, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created not the jinn and humans except that they should worship me alone. I did not create the jinn and insan and human beings for any purpose other than to worship me alone. I do not seek any provision from them. I do not seek rizq from them, nor do I ask that they should feed me or my creatures. Verily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu is the all provider, the owner of power, and the most strong. Obviously, I cannot possibly say this with greater emphasis or say it more clearly, because this is the actual speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So please reflect on this ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned rizq, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the purpose of our creation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He, Jalla Shanuhu, Amma Nawaluhu, is the one who gives rizq to us, and He is able to do that, and He has the full power and authority and control to be able to do this. Now, what is rizq? There's any number of misconceptions about what rizq is. So I won't list those. I won't talk about those. Let me talk about what it is. Rizq is an all-encompassing word which includes everything that we need to live in this world. It is not restricted to only money or food. It includes the air we breathe, the water we drink and use, the time we have in this life, knowledge, energy, health, beauty, strength, food, education, money. Our spouses are rizq, our children are rizq, movable and immovable property, our power, influence, authority, and every conceivable kind of resource that we can imagine that we need for us to survive and live. All of this is part of rizq. Now, I want to mention to you the hadith about Qadr, about destiny, on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, who said, one day I was mounted behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the same mount, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "O young man, I will teach you some words of advice. Be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. Be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will find Him in front of you. If you ask only Allah. And if you seek help, then seek help only from Allah. And know that if the nation, if the whole world and everyone it contains were to gather together to benefit you with anything, they would not benefit you except with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already prescribed for you. And if they were all to gather together to harm you with anything, they would not be able to harm you except with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already prescribed against you. The pens have been lifted and the pages have dried." In another narration, this hadith is in Tirmidhi, in another narration, not in Tirmidhi, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, "Be mindful of Allah and you will find Him in front of you. Recognize and acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of ease and prosperity, and He will remember you in times of adversity. And know that what has passed you by was not going to befall you, and what has befallen you was not going to pass you by. And know that victory comes with patience, relief comes with affliction, and hardship comes with ease." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said about this in another place. He said, "Do not say if only, because if only is the door of Shaytaan." So if something happens and you say, "Oh, if only I had done this, if only I had not done this," this is the door of Shaytaan. What happened to you happened because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote it, and there is nothing in the world that you could have done to avoid it or to bring it on. And this is a source of enormous contentment and enormous comfort to us, especially in times of bereavement or any times of loss. Now, Shaitan, on the other hand, obviously, he is on his sworn mission to deceive us and to take us into Jahannam, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from Shaitan. So his deception, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ash-shaytanu ya'idukumul faqra wa ya'murukum bil fahsha wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla wallahu wasi'un alim." In Surah Al-Baqarah, in ayah number 268, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Shaitan threatens you with poverty and orders you to do shameful things, shameful deeds, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you forgiveness and great bounties and blessings from Him, Jalla Jalaluhu, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all bountiful and all knowing." So it's very important to remember this, because when we think of shameful things, we only think of shameful things of a physical nature, but there is nothing more shameful than deliberately disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal and haram, and deliberately, knowingly going against that. So somebody borrowing money on interest, for example, for a mortgage or for business or whatever, is doing something which is extremely shameful, and maybe the most shameful, because by borrowing money on interest or lending money on interest or having to do anything with interest, this person is actually accepting a declaration of war from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared in Surah Al-Baqarah, and there's nothing more shameful than that. So shamefulness is not only to do with the body or with that kind of stuff, or the way you dress, or the way it has to do with disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Shaytaan orders you and deceives you and persuades you to do shameful things, meaning to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one way or the other. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us His mercy and forgiveness, and therefore it is something for us to think about when we take our decisions in life, whether we want to follow Shaytaan or we want to follow the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed and not decreed, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed and showed us. Now there are 5 questions with regard to, if you look at the 5 questions that we are asked or will be asked when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, you will see that all of them are related to rizq. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the Hadith, the son of Adam alayhi salam will not pass away from Allah, will not move from his place on the Maidan of Hashar until he is asked about 5 things. And what are the 5 things? How did he live his life? How did he utilize his youth? With what means did he earn his wealth? How did he spend his wealth? And what did he do with his knowledge? And this is in Tirmidhi. Now if you think about that, the first is with regard to the way he lived his life, how did he use his time? The second is to do with youth. How did he utilize his youth? Which is again time. The third one is how did he earn wealth? And the fourth one is how did he spend that wealth? And the fifth one is what did he do with the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him? All of these things are questions related to rizq. And that is why rizq is such an important matter for us to understand, so that we take the right decisions. Because without that, on the Day of Judgment, may Allah protect us, we can be in very serious trouble. Now there are 6 important matters that I want to address in this presentation. First one is that rizq is preordained and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responsible for it. Number 2, we have a choice about where we earn it from and where we spend it. Number 3, Shaytaan frightens us with poverty, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comforts us with His power. Number 4, both plenty and shortage are tests. Both plenty in our rizq and shortage of rizq, both of these are tests. Number 5, what to do if we have difficulties with rizq. And number 6 is the reason why we still need to work. And inshallah, we will talk about all of these, inshallah. So let's begin from understanding one absolutely critical point. And believe me, if you understand this, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable this to permeate our hearts and to completely illuminate our hearts with this absolutely firm belief, and that is that the quantum of rizq, the total quantity of rizq is preordained, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken its responsibility. Everything else is the only choice we have is in the way to get it. Quantum is fixed. Now, let me give you the dalail for this, the evidence for this. In Surah Al-Ankabut, in ayah number 62, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allahu yabsutu rizqa liman yasha'u min ibadihi wa yaqdiru lah. Inna Allah bi kulli shay'in alim. Allah said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlarges the provision of whom He wills of His slaves and restricts it for whom He wills. Verily, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-knower of everything. In Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna rabbaka yabsutu rizqa liman yasha'u wa yaqdiru. Innahu kana bi'ibadihi khabiran basira. Which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and this is Surah Al-Isra, Surah Bani Israel, ayah number 30, Truly, your Rabb enlarges the provision for whomever He wills and restricts it for whom He wills. Verily, He is ever all-knower and all-seer of His slaves. In Surah Al-Rum, ayah 37, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Do they not see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlarges the provision of whom He wills and restricts it for whom He wills? Verily, in that are indeed signs for people who believe. In Surah Al-Saba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that He is the one who decides. Surah Al-Saba, ayah 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ إِنَّا رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah said, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, verily my Rabb enlarges and restricts provision to whom He pleases. But most people do not know. In Surah Al-Saba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned the issue of rewards, especially a reward for what we spend in charity, the investment we make in charity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَيَقْدِرُ لَهُ وَمَا أَنْفَقْتُم مِّنْ شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ يُخْلِفُهُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is Surah Sabah, ayah 39, He said, say, truly my Rabb enlarges the provision for whom He wills of His slaves and also restricts it for him, whoever He wills. And whatsoever you spend of anything in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's cause, He will replace it. And He is the best of providers. In Surah Al-Shura, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned ayah number 12, لَهُ مَقَالِيدُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. To Him, Jalla Jalaluhu, belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. He enlarges provision for whom He wills and restricts it for whom He wills. Verily, He is the all-knower of everything. Now, rizq is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Zumar, ayah number 52, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَوَلَمْ يَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah said, do they not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlarges the provision of whom He wills and restricts it for whom He wills? Verily, in this are signs for people who believe. Now, these are not all the ayat related to rizq in the Quran. There are many more. And I have taken, I think it's enough for me for this lecture, because we want to keep it short. I have given you enough evidence to show that, first of all of these ayat are meant to comfort us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't worry about your rizq. Leave it to Allah. Allah is saying, I am powerful enough to take care of you. I have enough in my treasures to take care of you. Yeah? SubhanAllah, just think about this. I mean, this is such a shameful thing for us to worry, because this is the one, Rabbul Alameen, who created the heavens and the earth and all that it contains, all that we know and we don't know. And we think that He cannot provide us with one loaf of bread. I mean, what kind of mentality is this? And if that is the case, why are we even worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He can do all of this and more. So Allah is saying all of these ayat really are meant to comfort us. We are asked not to worry, not to stress ourselves, but only to ensure that we earn making the right choices. Right? Only to ensure that we make the right choices. This is the only thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to make sure that we do. Because otherwise, the issue is that if we make the wrong choices, then we get into trouble. Now, it's for this reason that the questions on the Day of Judgment, which I mentioned to you before, are only about the means of earning and the ways of spending. There is no question about the amount that we earn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ask you and me How is it you did not become a billionaire when Elon Musk was a billionaire? No, Allah will not ask you that question. Allah will ask you, where did you earn from? Where did you spend it? And the same question He will ask me. And the same question He will ask any person, any believer who goes before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same question, of course, to everybody else. But if the person was not even a believer in the first place, then this question will not come to him. The question for him will be, who did you worship? And if he did not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a different story. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله